Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia Kramer, and I'm the Program Director of AGRRA, which is the Atlantic and Gulf Rapid Reef Assessment Program. And I'm joined here by my colleagues, Judith Lang, who is our Science Advisor, and also Lynette Roth, who is our Database Manager. I'm really pleased to be able to work with all of the leaders of the Caribbean Coral Spawning Database. We have Anastazia Banaszak, Valérie Chamberland, Lynette Roth, and Jennifer Malone. And so welcome to everybody. If you're just joining us, please put your name and affiliation and your location in the chat and say hello that way. We have a great agenda today. We're really excited to be able to talk about coral spawning. After many years of tracking coral disease outbreaks and watching corals die, tracking diadema die-off and having those die, this is a really important opportunity to start tracking what is spawning and what is actually reproducing and repopulating the reefs. So this is a very timely way to kick this summer off. We're excited to get back in the water this summer and to see what is coral spawning, and more importantly, to share those observations with each other. So first, I would like to ask everybody if they could turn their video off so that we don't overwhelm the system, but still please write your name in the system. And also, if you can please put your microphones on mute. And we'll get started. So first, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Anastazia Banaszak, who is the professor at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. She leads the Integrative Reef Conservation Research Lab, and her research is focused on reproductive biology and ecology of corals and the application of this knowledge to develop low-cost, scalable coral restoration programs. And she has a great dedication and love for helping to share her expertise in the Caribbean and working with others. So Anya, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and share your screen, and we'll get started. She's going to be talking to us today about the history of coral spawning monitoring in the Caribbean.
And sorry, Anya, I couldn't find the microphone button.
Actually, before we get started, we're still letting some people in, so I'm going to wait just a minute.
Okay,
and
sure.
While we're waiting, if you can stop sharing your screen, we'll go ahead and do a poll because people are still joining us. We want to give them a chance to join. So we'll do a poll real quickly because we want to learn more about you and who's here. I mean, I'm just amazed to see everybody here. So we have a poll here, 2 quick questions. If you can tell us more about the organization you are with. And then also, what is your role within that organization? And we'll give you just a few minutes to fill this out. Okay, we still have a few more participants who are adding their information. Okay, last chance. Okay, we'll go ahead and share the results with you. And hopefully everybody can see that. So we have a wide range of people joining us today, mostly from nonprofit organizations, academic, government, and a few business and other. Looking forward to seeing what some of those others are. Okay, great. And then your role within the organization. Most of you are scientists or researchers that are joining us, managers, which is great because we like to put data to work and helping us, guide policies and protecting our reefs. A lot of practitioners, some volunteers, and some students too. So welcome to everybody. We're going to do another quick poll. And this one is asking if you have ever seen coral spawning. So many of you may work with coral spawning. Maybe you're just starting off and learning how corals reproduce and haven't had a chance to, but are looking forward to this summer. And the second question is, if you are going to be doing coral spawning monitoring, where are you most likely to be doing it? What region are you going to be working in? So we'll give everyone just a few minutes. This is exciting. I love to see that so many people have seen coral spawning. That's great. And for those who have not yet seen it, we're really encouraging you this summer to help get eyes under the water so that we can learn more from your area. Okay, I think a few more people are answering the second question. We're almost finished answering that. We'll give another few seconds. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share our results. So let's take a look. Okay, so nearly 75% of everybody has seen coral spawning, which is great. And we're going to ask this time at the end of the summer, for those who have not yet seen it, hopefully you'll be able to share back with us and say that you have been able to get out and see it. And the second question is, where are you most likely to monitor coral spawning if you're going to be doing coral spawning? So we have a great representation throughout the Caribbean and Florida. And I'd love to see some of those other. If you did write other, please write in the chat where you will be monitoring coral spawning, if it's in a different area outside of the Caribbean or in the Gulf of Mexico. So we do have a lot of people from the Northern Caribbean, from Florida, and also from the Central Caribbean. That's really wonderful. Okay. So just so everyone can take a quick look at those results. Okay, now Anya, we'll get back to you. I think it was a great way for us to all get started. I'm excited again to see that everyone is able to join us, and most of you have seen coral spawning, and we have a lot of people from throughout the region. So Anya?
Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody. It's amazing to see. I could see 109 participants. That's just really amazing. And we know that several people couldn't make it. So this is really exciting to see so many people and from throughout the Caribbean and from the different organizations. It's very exciting for us that this is being a popular webinar. So I thought I would start with a little bit about the history of coral spawning monitoring in the Caribbean. So what is it now, 40 years ago? Pretty much the main idea was that corals spawned by brooding. So they would spawn plannularly, meaning that they had produced eggs and sperm, and there would be internal fertilization and internal embryonic development, and then they would spawn the plannularly. However, in 1984, a paper by a number of students from James Cook University came out showing that 32 coral species spawned on the same nights in the Great Barrier Reef. So our vision since then has grown, and we now know that at least 367 species of corals mass spawn, or were spawned by spawning gametes. So I think this is sort of one of the reasons for the background of this database, is to know when do these species spawn, especially in the Caribbean. So why are these observations so important to us? Well, first, we know that most of the spawning happens around full moon, or it's guided by the full moon, or sometimes by the new moon, depending on which species we're talking about. So we want to learn more about the timing, as well as all the triggers and the environmental cues, such as temperature, moon phase, and tides, that then guide coral spawning. And that means then we can track changes in spawning behavior or timing. And this is becoming particularly important in climate change studies. But it also allows us to do a lot of research on genetic diversity and connectivity, as well as being obviously useful in reef restoration projects, because when we can collect coral gametes for those projects or also for experiments. And then basically now that we have all of these observations, we think that it's really important to share those observations, because we know that many people around the Caribbean, especially after the bleaching events and the disease events that have unfortunately unfolded in the Caribbean especially, means that people are really interested in collecting coral spawn, either for experiments or for restoration projects. And so that led to the development of spawning prediction calendars. And that information comes from having all of these spawning observations and being able to predict. And the more spawning observations that we can have, the better become our prediction calendars. So in terms of documenting observations, we have a lot of foundational observations from the 1980s to the 1990s, especially, where these studies documented coral spawning events across the Caribbean and helped to establish the baseline reproductive patterns of a number of species. This includes work by Alina Schmant, by Fadlala, by Mark Barmé, Ernesto Weil, and colleagues. And then from about the year 2000 and onwards, there was an expansion of monitoring efforts, with researchers expanding throughout Caribbean locations and looking at species-specific spawning times and the environmental triggers. And a really good thesis to look at is by Anna Jordan, who was a student in Nicole Fogarty's lab. And then from 2017, Nicole set up a Facebook page called the Coral Spawning Research Group. We very much encourage you to join the group if you're not there already. It's basically a forum for scientists and managers and the general public to post their observations, their questions, and discussion topics, all regarding coral sexual reproduction. And there's also a form there for entering spawning monitoring data. And with these forms, then it became obvious that there was a lot of interest in monitoring coral spawning, and therefore in wanting to predict more accurately when spawning would happen. And so prediction calendars began, and also there was the data that was used to be placed in the Facebook page in a form, in basically a Word format, was turned into an Excel spreadsheet by Mark Vermey and Valérie Chamberland, and based on that format. And so where did the idea for the Caribbean Coral Spawning Database arise? Well, when Valérie and I were co-chairs of the Larval Propagation Working Group for the Coral Restoration Consortium, we noticed there was a lot of interest in coral spawning. And so we felt that it would be really great to have all of these data on coral spawning in one centralized database, and preferably searchable. So we also knew that there was this increased interest in coral spawning patterns from around the Caribbean, especially due to issues such as the disease events, especially sclerotinia coral tissue loss disease and the bleaching events that led to the loss of coral colonies. And so there's a huge probability that there's less possibility of fertilization happening naturally between colonies. We do want to emphasize that this database is not meant to replace ongoing efforts to share data with others, especially the Coral Spawning Research Facebook page. It's still an extremely valuable tool, because you can see firsthand, including on the night of, sometimes people are really great about putting their data in as soon as they see spawning. And so that lets others around the Caribbean know whether spawning is happening or not, whether there's a particular species spawning or not. So that's been very useful for us. So one of the reasons that we have delayed a bit in getting the database out was to get funding. And fortunately, we were able to get a little bit of funding through CORDAP to build the database through AGRRA. And basically, it's part of a project called Restoration Roadmaps, Improving Coral Restoration and Capacity of Managers in the Caribbean MPA Connect Network. And it really came sort of to the fore for me, especially, that there was a really strong need to have this database because of the wide interest around the Caribbean, especially from new groups. So one of the project objectives was then to build this online coral spawning database. And fortunately, Patricia and Judy and Lynette and Jacob at AGRRA were just really wonderful in helping us to form this database. So there I will end and pass the baton back to Patricia.
Thank you, Anya. It's great to see the history of that, because I think all of us have started seeing reefs. If you think back to the first time you've seen a reef, you know, we were all coming in at different times. So it's great to see the history and how long all of these groups have been looking at coral spawning and really trying to get, like you said, to understand better how they're reproducing, especially if it can help contribute to rescue and rehabilitation of reefs. Thank you. We're going to be saving questions until the end. So if you have questions, you know, feel free to jot them down, and we're going to have a discussion time at the end where we want everyone to participate. Up next, we're going to have Valérie. And Valérie, I'm going to ask if you could share your screen. So Valérie is a research scientist at SECORE International, originally from Quebec, Canada. She is now located in Curacao. And she has been working for over 15 years on looking at coral reproduction and really trying to understand how corals are growing and they're at their earliest stages, because this is one of their most vulnerable times in their life. And she has a specific focus on looking at what conditions help them survive, grow, and thrive. And at SECORE, her findings are being applied to optimize and scale up techniques that use these coral offspring to help repopulate reefs. So Valérie, welcome, and get started. If you want to go ahead and put it in full screen mode.
Perfect. Sorry, I was also looking for the unmute button, which disappears when you share your screen. So thanks everyone for being here today. Patricia, thanks for the lovely introduction. And so in this section, I will be going over the different components of the new Caribbean coral spawning database and explaining how it's built and how it functions. Before I do that, I do want to spend the time highlighting people that have contributed to making this project a reality. And some of them have been participating in building the database. Others have been providing helpful feedback along the way. And so I want to start by thanking Jacob Roth and Rusty Lay, who have been really working behind the scenes, doing all of the coding behind the database and the Coral Observer app. And then I want to also thank Vanessa Francisco, who's been the one, you know, doing all of the groundwork in entering some of the Mexico data from Anya's team into the database and troubleshooting all the errors together with Lynette Roth, which, you know, allows us now to know what to do and what not to do with the database, with the data that we collect. I also want to take the time to thank Joanna Figueiredo, Nicole Fogarty, Kristen Marhaver, Margaret Miller, Chelsea Petrick, Valeria Pizarro, Rita Solares, and Maria Villalpando. All of you have joined one or more of our calls to sort of see where we're at and provide feedback on the different components of the database. Also, big thanks to CORDAP, AGRRA, and CORALIUM for providing funding that was needed to set up this database. And I want to finish by saying thank you to a lot of you that are on the line today and others who cannot join, but that have diligently contributed data along the, you know, in the previous years, kind of fully trusting Anya and I with your precious spawning observations, with our promise that one day there will be a database where all these data will be collided and then will be available to the public. And so this is the whole idea of the centralized Caribbean coral spawning database, is to get data from you guys back into this database for your general use. So here is where I want to show the different components of the database. What you see here, I'm going to turn on my pointer option. So here in the middle is the actual database. That's where the data lives. It's on AGRRA's secure web server. We also have a backup at UNAM, which is managed by Anya. Oh, did I lose my screen? Wait, I think I pushed the wrong button.
We see your screen.
See
Oh,
your
okay,
screen
I don't
now.
see my slides anymore.
Mhm.
It's showing part of the diagram. If you want to keep clicking through
One
it.
second. I think I'm gonna have to unshare and reshare because I cannot find my screen anymore. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
Don't know what happened there.
The importance
Okay,
of
can you
backup.
see my slides now?
Perfect.
Yes.
I can see them. Okay. So I was saying that there's the, where the data lives. There is then a backup at UNAM that is managed by Anya. And then we have, there are two options to enter data in the database. The first option is for all of the past or historical data, and as well as for the new data that will be entered in the coming few months. And this is through the Excel sheet, which is quite similar to the template that a lot of you have been using in the past, but it has been revised to include more data validations and make sure that we reduce the amount of potential incorrect or erroneous entries. This Excel sheet will also be used for you to then convert your data into, like, all of your historical or past data into this template for its incorporation into the Caribbean spawning database. More exciting is that we are working on an application which is called CoRalObserver. This is something that Jennifer Malone is going to be presenting in a little bit. And so this application will allow you to create your own account on the application, in which you can then enter your data in this kind of survey form. And eventually you'll be able to refer back to all of your own data, see your past data you've been entering at your different sites. The CoRalObserver is still in development, but we will make sure to let you know when it's ready for public use. What I also wanted to mention here is that in your user account, you will be able to see your own data, but you will not be able to have access to raw data from other users and vice versa. Whether or not whether you're using the Excel template or the CoRalObserver, you will be receiving, after you submit your data, you will be receiving a clean version of your data sets, either in a CSV file or Excel format, in which all of your time and dates will have been automatically converted into days after full moon and minutes after sunset. So really like the clean copy with all of the output that is going into the database. And so whenever you submit data, you do get your own data back, but not data from other users. After you submit your data, there will be a phase of data review and validation by the corresponding database team. This means that we will be checking that your data are entered in the correct format, that they fit, the requirements for the database. And again, very important to note here is that only the corresponding database managers will be able to view and access the full database. So what does happen to your data when it's, once it's entered in the database? First, which I think is one of the most exciting part, is that they will be displayed in interactive maps and dashboards that are provided by AGRRA. Lynette and Patricia will be giving you a tour of this dashboard, but basically your data will be shown online in these interactive maps and dashboards with all kinds of summaries and graphs and images that can help you understand better or predict better where, when is a species going to spawn in your own area based on data from nearby areas, or you can filter through those dashboards to get the information that you need. Again, Lynette will be giving us a tour of these dashboards and maps. And one more note is that your raw data here is not shown publicly. This is really just like summaries of all of the database. Lastly, the third type of output is the actual raw data that's in the database, which might be useful for different types of data analyses or publications. And then this will only be made available, subsets of the raw data can only be downloaded by different individuals upon requests by users or members of the public with explicit consent of the owners of a given data set. So for example, if someone is interested in all the Acropora spawning observations from Puerto Morelos, from Anya's team, they will then need to get her explicit permission that we will be then sharing that piece or that subset of data with them. So this brings me to our data sharing agreement, which is applicable whenever you will be submitting data either through Excel or through Coral Observer, in terms of agreeing how your data will be stored and used. And this is something that we've been brainstorming a lot about, and how do we make sure that the data is secure? How do we make sure it's useful for others without sharing all of your raw data from all of those years with the public? And so basically the agreement says that by uploading your data, you agree to its incorporation into the Caribbean coral spawning database, and you agree for your data to be displayed in open access, interactive maps, and data visualization tools that are provided by AGRRA. You will be asked to agree to this sharing agreement, whenever you'll be sending data through an Excel format. There will be a form in your Excel sheet that you need to sign before you send it over to us. And you will always also be prompted to accept the sharing agreement when you register to Coral Observer before you can submit your observations. I again do want to remind you here that the sharing agreement does still protect your own data, your raw data, because again, only coral spawning data managers can view and download the full database. Subsets of the raw data can only be uploaded if you have explicit content from the owner of the data set. In Coral Observer, you can only see your own data, your own raw data, not the data from other users. And there is no full access to any sort of raw data online. So this is where my part ends. Oh, no, sorry, I have to talk about data validation. I'm sorry. What happens when you have successfully submitted data to the database? There will be this process where the small team of the corresponding database management team will be reviewing the data and validating all the data to make sure that it's correct format and that it's compatible with the database. So first, AGRRA will be running a script on your data set to identify any possible errors before it is incorporated in the database. Both Coral Observer and the Excel template were built in a way to really minimize incorrect entries. So that's like all these data validation checks. But please, before you submit data, carefully review your own data sets before submitting it. We are only a very small team of people that will be reviewing all these new data, and it will be super helpful if you have already validated most of your own data before you submit it. And then if you are unsure about the validity of an observation, so let's say you're not super sure on species ID, or if it's, was it spawning I saw, yes or no, you can always contact Anya or myself for further guidance. There's also a place in the Excel sheet, which I will give a tour of the Excel sheet a little bit later, but there is a place in the Excel sheet to add additional remarks where you could say, hey, I'm not sure about this observation, please review. And the same also will be applicable in Coral Observer. We also want to mention that sometimes pictures can help a lot with validating these kind of observations, especially when you are unsure. So this email address here is where you will be submitting your Excel data. And you can also send pictures and say, hey, like line entry, whatever, I'm not sure about this one. Here's pictures associated to my observation, and then we can validate those together with you. So this is where my first section does officially end. I will pass it back to Patricia.
Thank you, Val. Okay, so next we're going to switch and talk and dive into the two ways that you can enter data and where you can get more information. At AGRRA, we're very excited about being able to put data to action, put it to good use for either conservation or management. And really make this data come alive. A lot of times we have all these databases and they're in different places. So this is a wonderful opportunity to bring all this various data together. Just like the reefs throughout the Caribbean are very diverse and very different in each of the regions, the spawning data is going to be different in the way that it's collected. So we're hoping to be able to pull this together to provide some standardization and, most important, share it with everybody. On our website, you can go to the under reef monitoring. Valérie and Anya had asked if we could start to collate some of this information to make it handy for everybody. And this is a collective platform and a hub. So we really welcome you to share your information. This is where you can find the updated Excel data sheets and also an underwater data sheet. It's where the live map is going to be shown, and Lynette's going to be talking about that in a few minutes. There's also resources, and we welcome if you have other resources from webinars that we have worked to help sponsor or to other people have had. So you can learn more about getting prepared for coral spawning this season and what you can do underwater. The spawning prediction calendars that are available are here, and some of them are from 2024, and we're starting to update those. If you have a spawning calendar that you would like to share, please let us know, and we'd be happy to add a link to your website. I think this is really great because more and more people are starting to look more closely at their own corals and starting to find out how different species spawn when they spawn in their areas. You can access the coral breeding reference sheets, which are an amazing resource that that'll help lead with the larval propagation working group from the CRC. And so these are available there. Also, there are a list of publications here that might be useful if you're trying to just learn more about some of the coral spawning work that has been going on. And if you have other resources, let us know. There's two other websites, actually a few other websites that are really useful for information. The Coral Restoration Consortium Larval Propagation Working Group has a web page on the CRC website with a lot of this information and other resources. Also, the Nature Conservancy's Reef Resilience Program has some really wonderful educational resources as well. And we also invite you that if you do share your data and want to become a data contributor, let us know. We can put a link directly to your website. And if you have other educational information. So it's really an opportunity to just get people excited about all the great information that's been collected and can be shared. And one thing we'll start doing here is I'll introduce you to the to Lynette Roth and talk about our Caribbean coral spawning tracking map. Lynette is originally did her graduate work at Florida Institute of Technology with Dr. Robert Van Wosick. She worked with the Nature Conservancy in the Caribbean for many years, working with data and GIS. And we have been really fortunate to have her part of our team here at AGRRA to lead our database development and also all of the amazing data visualization tools and helping us make data come alive and making it wider, available to a wider audience. So Lynette, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you and help us dive into the tracking map.
I need to turn on your microphone, Lynette.
Lynette, I think you're on mute.
Lynette, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's start again, shall we? Okay, thank you so much, Patricia. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into our tracking map that we have here for our coral spawning database. This is a new and updated version of some of the maps that you may have seen on the AGRRA website on some of the other pages that we have. So kind of similar to the other ones that we have available, this one is interactive. So once you scroll down on this web page, you can just go ahead and start diving in. You can click on the map. You can zoom in and out using the buttons here on the map. You can use your scroll on your mouse or even on your keyboard. If you find that you get too far involved and it's too hard, this little home button here, you click that, that'll take you right back to the full map extent. So as you can see here, we have a couple dots that this shows all of the data that we currently have within the database. We do have a lot more data from other partners that we're still currently trying to process, but this is what we currently have uploaded so far. So if you zoom in, you can see several different colored dots here. You may be wondering what those mean. There's a few buttons over here on the right hand of the map. The first one is a search. You can click on that and you can either use your current location and it'll zoom into where you are located if you have that enabled on your browser. You also can type in a city name or anything that you might be able to find on a map and it will zoom in into that location. Underneath that, we have our legend button. And this is what's going to fully explain what you're seeing here on the map. So you can see we have our 3 different color dots that are available. We can see which sites show that there is spawning or they have observed spawning occurring. Dribble being a form of spawning, but not a full-blown spawning event, as well as no spawning. And you can see here at the top, there's a header. It says this is for all species available. So for all of the species within our database for these site locations, this is kind of the breakdown of what we're seeing. So once you know what that is, what you're seeing on the map, you can explore a little bit more. You can click on any one of these dots that you see and a box will pop up and that further explains the information that you see at that location. So you can see here exactly which coral species that you're looking at, whether or not you had observed spawning at that time. You can scroll down, see the different data that is available, the date on which the survey was done. All the time does show up in the local time. So if this was done here in Mexico, then you know that that's the time that it was done. And then you can also observe, you know, what time spawning has started, what time it may have ended, if they were able to capture that on their dive, how many colonies they were able to monitor, how many were actually spawning, and some additional site information. What often happens, as you guys know, when you go out to a site, you may want to go out there on multiple nights. So maybe on the first 2 nights, you don't see any spawning, but the 3rd night you do. So that would all go up on the same spot of the map. And you can see up here at the top of this pop-up box exactly how many surveys that we actually have at this location. And these left and right arrows here just help filter through the different surveys. So you can see, you know, we have a different time here, a different day, and see the different data that may be available. So that's how you can kind of navigate on this live map to see the information that's currently being displayed. We do have additional data that's available, a different breakdown, and that's in that 3rd button right here. This is our layers button. So if you open this layer list, you can see different groupings of the layers that we have available. So this is kind of new. We haven't had this available on our previous mapping application, so we're really excited that if you have this little arrow here, you can click that to expand and see what layers we have available. We have that spawning, the dribble, and the no spawning, all of which are layers that are currently turned on. So let's say if you have, you know, all your spawning is showing up on top here, but you want to see, you know, maybe where we have some of that other information. If you turn off that spawning layer, you can see all the areas where we don't have any spawning, as well as the ones where we have some dribble observed. And that's what those little eyeballs are. The eyeballs are just turning that layer on and off. You can also turn all 3 off by closing this entire group. Besides looking at all the species all together, we also have a breakdown of individual species that we have available in our database. So if you were to turn off that all species and turn on, for example, let's say Acropora palmata, we can start to see the data that we have available just for this species alone. And again, all the same features apply here. You can turn the layers on and off, or you can even reorganize them. So if you want to say put the no spawning on top, but still be able to see, okay, which sites that you have spawning occurring, you have that ability, that flexibility. We have other species, let's say, like, for instance, if you're interested in looking at D-Lab, we know that that spawning is going to be coming up shortly. We can see what areas in the past have seen D-Lab spawning and all that same thing. And let's say if you want to be able to look at APOL with D-Lab, but you want to see the D-Lab on top, again, you just click these little buttons here and you can drag it and pop it on top. This just allows you, you know, to be able to turn things on and off and see things the way that you might want to be able to see them. Once you have a nice map that you're interested, let's say that you want to be able to use this in a report or something along those lines, there is an export button over here on the left-hand side. If you were to click this, you can change the title to whatever you might need for your report. You can include, the map, the legend. If there's just like one site that you want to be able to highlight, you can turn that on as well. And then there's different file types here, such as PDF, JPEG, or a PNG. And then you can hit export, and it'll give you a nice file directly to wherever your downloads go. So that is everything that we have about the tracking map. If you do have any questions about this, I do encourage you to write down those questions, and you can bring them up at the end of this webinar. So in addition to the tracking map, we are in the process of creating additional online data tools to be able to explore the data a little bit more. This will be in the form of a dashboard that will be linked both here on this webpage. We'll make a new section to include it here, as well as our data explorer. So if you go back up to the top of our webpage here, underneath Data Explorer, if you click on that, that'll take you to this webpage. And this is where we have all of our AGRRA online tools, such as we have dashboards. So we can see we have 4 of our dashboards for our AGRRA data that we currently have in our AGRRA database. We have some on the disease, on SCTLD. We have different data surveys that you can participate in, as well as different interactive mapping applications that we have available as well. So we will be adding the Caribbean coral spawning database dashboard to this section of our website as well. For those of you that may never have seen one of these dashboards before, I'm going to use our AGRRA Coral dashboard as an example, just to show you some of the features that we have available using these dashboards. So when you open one up, they're very visual, they're very graphic, they have lots of bright colors, and so just a more visual way to see some of the information that usually exists on Excel spreadsheets and things like this. This just makes it a little bit more interactive and fun to look at. There's lots of different indicators or different data ways that you can visualize this. One way is through these interactive maps. Again, fully interactive, just like you saw on our webpage. You can click and the data pops up. You can see exactly what's going on here. We can have multiple maps. So see here, first we had coral density, and now we can look at individual species density and just see the breakdown here. We can have these little insets with different just numerical values, just kind of, just a nice summary of some of the data that we have. And then we have different graphics, such as pie graphs and bar graphs, that help break down this data a little bit more. And all of these are interactable. You can hover over and it'll tell you exactly, what the data values are. There's also, we include a README, which is the metadata that helps explain everything that you're seeing on these dashboards. We have, these different bar graphs down here. So here we're showing a coral size frequency, and you can see the breakdown in the different size classes. And then we can break it down by species and look at that individually. And so all of these tabs you can interact with. And then we also have these stacked bar graphs. So there's lots of different options, lots of different ways that we can visualize that information. So we're really excited to kind of start to dive into these tools and see what we can build for the spawning database. So this is kind of a mock-up that I've thrown together to kind of show some of the indicators that we're looking at doing for the coral spawning dashboard. So you can see here, this is actually using a lot of the data that we do currently have in the database. So we can see that currently we have 708 spawning records. You can see all of those. Oh, so sorry, head back. This one is not interactive. This is a PowerPoint slide. But we have that interactive map here that you'd be able to zoom in and click around and be able to see, just like you saw on the web page. We can also break down that data a little bit more, visualize it by, let's say, organizations or the individual species. So you don't have to go over and start playing with the layers, but we can do it for you. We have the different pie graphs here where we can see like the number of spawning records per species. We can see the actual data values broken down. We can look at the number of spawning records per organizations. We can look at it per country. There's lots of different ways. There's also these options. We were interested to see like which months are we seeing that spawning is most likely to occur. as you would expect. We would see it mostly in the summertime here. This is for our overall database, but then we can break it down by species, see if different species spawn in different months, and kind of just track that data overall. And finally, over here, we have these spawning versus no spawning records per species. How often, are we not seeing them spawn versus when they are spawning? And these are honestly just a few of the options. There's many other data indicators that we're interested in looking at that we're going to be considering to add into this dashboard. We kind of just put this together to kind of give you a visual of what we're hoping to have up and available on our website in the coming months. So with that, if you are interested in being able to have your data be a part of this, to be a part of the database and part of the maps and these online tools, we're going to go ahead and turn it over now and talk about how you can get both your historical and your new data entered in and submitted to us.
And before we head over to Val to kind of dive into how to enter the data, just wanted to, Lynette, can you bring up the map again of the spawning data that we currently have and zoom out?
Yes.
Okay. On the website?
Yep.
Okay, there. So if you look at this and if you zoom out from there, you can see there's a lot of empty space. There's a lot of ocean out there and a lot of opportunity to fill in that data. And we're really looking forward to having people fill this in because, Lynette, if you go back to our SCTLD data map at the top. So over the last 5 years or so, we have, if you keep going down, you can see all of the data here. Look at all those points. People are very interested in sharing their data. And as I mentioned earlier, we've watched corals die. We've documented them. We have thousands and thousands of pictures of those corals dying. And so we would love to see the map that we are currently making for coral spawning be just as filled up. And it may take a little more looking and a lot of collaborating to share when and where you see these coral spawning, but my hope is that we can start to fill the spawning map just as much as we filled this map here. Thanks, Lynette. And now we're going to switch over to Val, and Val is going to take us into one of the ways to share the historical data.
Let's see. Okay, so in this part of the webinar, I will be presenting on how to go from your field observations that you're collecting underwater into integrating them into the coral spawning database. So first of all, I do want to bring your attention to this underwater template for data collection. It is, like Patricia mentioned earlier, it is available for download on AGRRA's website. We will also be asking the CRC if they would like to add it to the larval propagation working group's webpage. And so with this spreadsheet, when you're collecting your data underwater, you will ensure that you pretty much have all the information needed to be able to enter your information or your observation within the coral spawning database. I won't be spending much more time explaining this spreadsheet, but if you do have questions about it, please don't hesitate to reach out so I can explain a bit better to you how to use this underwater spreadsheet. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there will be 2 different ways of entering data into the coral spawning database. The first one being the Excel sheet, and then the other one being the Coral Observer. So the Excel sheet will be useful for the historical data, so all of your past data that you have already accumulated over the years, and also for the new data that you will be collecting this season until we are ready to use the Coral Observer in publicly. And so for this part of the presentation, I will be explaining a little bit more about the Excel spreadsheet. And afterwards, Jenny will be giving us a tour of the exciting Coral Observer app. But for now, we will be diving back into good old Excel templates. So this Excel template has been revised from the previous Excel template. It includes a lot more data validation that are coded within the spreadsheet to really reduce the amount of incorrect or erroneous data entries. It has fewer fields or fewer columns to really simplify the data entry. For example, days after full moon and minutes after sunset are automatically calculated when your data is imported into the coral spawning database. because those are quite often where we make mistakes in making those calculations and entering our data. And so these are calculated based on UTC time zone offset and the GPS coordinates that you will be entering into the Excel template. The template also includes all of the revised guidelines for incorporating your data properly into the corresponding database. It also includes a data sharing agreement and an example of data input. So I will be giving a bit of a small tour of this Excel template in a few seconds. But first, I really wanted to remind everyone that negative observations, so when you go out monitoring and no spawning happens, those are as useful as positive observations. We want to know when you were looking and then nothing happened. So please log those. We also want to let you know that incomplete observations or very little data are still super useful, so please share them. And now to a tour of the Excel template. So let me switch my screen real quick. So here's the Excel template. It has several different tabs. The first one is the guidelines on how to use the templates. You can always refer back to those if you have questions. There is then the data sharing agreement, which we will get back with in a few seconds. An example of how you should enter your data, and then the actual tab where you will be entering your observations. So let's go back to the guidelines, and I think I'll just read through some of these and give a few examples. So the first thing that's pretty important when working with this template is to not remove or add any columns in the spreadsheet, because then it will make your spreadsheet incompatible when we want to import it into the corresponding database. I also mentioned here to not edit the menu option tab. There are some scroll down menus in the input file, like for example, these. Lynette has very carefully hidden the menu option bar to make sure that no one is deleting them by mistake. But if you would be able to find it, please do not edit the menu option because it might result in your spreadsheet not working anymore. Then, as you might have noticed in the input tab, there are columns that are kind of in blue and others are in orange. So the blue fields or the blue columns are where data entries are mandatory. So it won't let you submit your data unless these are not filled in. And those are quite important because it's the date, the site, like when was it, where were you, or like some of the important questions for you to be able to enter your data. When were you looking and which coral species were you looking at are also mandatory fields. And then also important for your observation to be useful is, was spawning observed, yes or no? The last mandatory fields are your contact information and the name of your organization. And that's because, well, first, we want to make sure we're able to reach you if we have questions about your data entries. But we also really want to make sure that we know who you are and where you work, so we can also acknowledge your contributions on the AGRRA website as well. Then the columns that are in orange are optional. It's really good if you do have them. If you don't, it is not a huge problem. Your data entries will still be very useful regardless. This can be, for example, if you don't know the setting, you know, when did coral start setting? Maybe you haven't seen it because you got into the water and it was already happening. So you don't have the start of setting. It could also be that you don't know when spawning ended because you left the water before corals stopped spawning. So all of these orange fields are not mandatory for you to fill in. In the case where you do not have these this information or these data, please do not enter any like NA or dash or dot or whatsoever. It won't let you do it anyways, but you should just leave these columns blank. So back to the guidelines. So the cells where you don't have any information should just be left blank. If you enter something else, it will give you an error. If you're not sure how to fill in the mandatory fields or any of the fields in this template, please reach out to corresponding agrra.org for more guidance. This will be email address will be monitored by Anya and I, so we can always provide more feedback or guidelines. And then pay attention to the format in which the data should be entered. Like I mentioned earlier, Lynette has coded a lot of the input spreadsheet. So you can already see here that there's a lot of data validation. So for example, if you would be to enter a minimum depth. You see here in these little yellow squares, it must be a positive value. So if you would be entering -5, which I don't think you were monitoring spawning above water, it will give you an error. So a lot of these validations, data validations, are built into the spreadsheet. Coral species, this is a place where quite often we make mistakes with typos, spelling mistakes, so you can choose them from this scroll down menu. Number of colonies must be a positive value. So again, if you're trying to enter a negative value, that will not work. So all of these, like most of these cells have these data validations that are built into the spreadsheet. So for example, if you were monitoring 20 colonies, but then you say that you saw 25 of them spawn, that also won't work because then you probably were monitoring 25 of them and not 20. So all of these data validations are there to really help us reduce the amount of incorrect data entries. Now, once you have entered all of your new observations and you are ready to share your data with the corresponding database, you will need to read and sign this data sharing agreement. So here is the actual language around the sharing data agreement, which I've explained a little bit earlier. And then you can fill in this form where you enter your name, your organization, email address, again, here to make sure we can contact you. You would check this box and then add your electronic signature. And you can also have here also paste your organization's logos. It's easier for us to then take your logo and put it up on our website as a data contributor. The way to save your file is going to be in this format, which includes your country, year, and your organization. That will help us know where the data comes from and which year it was compiled. And you can send your monitoring observation at correspondingagra.org, which again will be monitored by both Anya and I to see, like when the new data entries are coming in. And then remember, two things I want to mention here again is that there are prediction tables or corresponding prediction calendars that will be available on the CRC's larval propagation webpage and on AGRRA's website that can help you then decide, when you should be monitoring spawning and seeing where there's still missing information. So you can refer to those. I also want to really emphasize to continue sharing your daily observations on the corresponding research Facebook page. It's a really incredible tool to help keep the whole community updated live throughout the region. And to, of course, dive safely. And if you have more questions about this specific spreadsheet, you can always, again, email Anya and I or the corresponding agra.org. So this was the tour of the Excel spreadsheet and how to enter your new data. But then what happens when you want to contribute historical data? So data that you have accumulated for over the years, potentially 10, 15 years of data, that will need to be then transferred into, like from the either format that you have it in, like either it's your own custom made spreadsheet or the old Excel data sheet into the new Excel template. And the difference here is that when you are copying, large amounts of data from your old spreadsheet into the new one, you will be erasing the data validation that Lynette has built into the new template. So that really means that you need to make sure that you check, the format of your data, that you review your data very well, that you will be removing the columns that are not needed, checking your formats, etc., carefully reviewing your updated data sets. Lynette at AGRRA will then run a script on your data set to make sure that any remaining errors have been identified before your data is incorporated into this corresponding database. Now, this might sound very tedious and like a lot of work, but Vanessa Francisco at UNAM has been through this process and has already entered a ton of data from Puerto Morelos, from Anya's team. And she's learned a lot on how to do this as smoothly as possible. And then she will be available to be working with you to ensure that this process is as smooth as possible. We will also be training a new SECORE technician that will be starting to work in Curacao. And she will be trained to then help you do this process as easily as possible. So if you have historical data, please reach out to us, and we will also be reaching to you because we do have a lot of data sets from you from the past so that we can integrate them in a database. The reason why we are not doing that without your help is that we want to make sure that if we do run into errors, that we work through them with you to make sure that we are not, changing your data set to something that's potentially incorrect. Some of these errors might be, for example, if you have added a minus sign in front of a latitude, or if you have entered an NA in a column, or it's mostly about your data not being written in the right format. And so again, once your historical data has been validated and uploaded to the corresponding database, you will get back a clean copy of all your data that you can then also store it for your own records. And lastly, as everyone will be contributing data, either through your historical data or your new data or through Coral Observer, your contributions will be acknowledged on AGRRA's website as we enter new data from new organizations. And yes, we hope that you will be sharing your observations with us. And now I do want to pass on the microphone to Jennifer Malone, who is going to be giving us a tour of the Coral Observer, which is going to be the future of how we enter data for this corresponding database.
Thank you, Val. And thank you for going over all the details and the importance of standardizing data. And I do want to just recognize the amount of effort that you and Vanessa and Lynette have put in to standardize that information so that it can improve accuracy and consistency, especially when comparing data across the region and across time. So thank you. So next up, we have Jenny Malone, and we're really excited to have her here. She is a Smith Conservation Research Fellow with the National Coral Reef Institute at Nova Southeastern University in Florida, which is kind of neat. She kind of got started in all of this because of Anya. She went to a coral reproduction course with her, and I think that kind of inspired her to keep doing this. And so she continued with coral reproduction work and looking at spawning, and has a big interest in helping to work with others in collecting this information. And during the pandemic, she worked with a friend of hers, Rusty Lay, who is a database developer, and they developed the Coral Observer app, which you'll hear more about. And it's kind of neat to think that, over this time, putting all this great information together so that we can have a great new way to enter this. So Jenny, welcome, and you can go ahead and dive in. Jenny, you're on mute if you want to unmute your, there we go.
Good morning, everyone. Can you just let me know if you can see my starting slide?
Yes, everything looks great.
Wonderful. So hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Malone. I'm at the National Coral Reef Institute at Nova Southeastern University. And I am delighted to share with you all Coral Observer. So I've been working on this app since around 2021 with my friend Rusty Lee at Quantum Web, who builds web applications for his living. And this was like a fun side project to give something back to coral reef restoration research. So Coral Observer aims to streamline the way that we collect, compile, and share coral spawning observations across the different reef sites and across different observer groups. So our goals with Coral Observer were simple. We wanted to help bring people together, to bring the data collected together, and data collected not only by coral spawning scientists, but also conservation practitioners, citizen scientists, and everyone else who's involved in this amazing work, with the idea of supporting reef restoration research efforts. So Coral Observer can be accessed at www.coralobserver.com. We have a QR code that takes you straight there. And then after you've accessed it via the website, you will be able to download the app onto your device. So Coral Observer has a user-friendly interface. It collects all the same data as the Excel spreadsheet that you're used to. But the idea was just to make it as quick and easy as possible to input your data. Also, particularly if you're in the field, in a remote location, or perhaps you don't use Excel or you don't readily have access to it. It's just an alternative, easy way of inputting data. So this is the user-friendly interface, and you can see it's got drop-down menus and a map there. It standardizes the data input. So by using drop-down menus, it reduces the amount of errors. So you can select your species, for example, but you don't have to type out the full name and potentially get spelling errors in there. There's also a Google map embedded so that you can get a precise location. You can visualize your own data geographically. And it outputs a data file that is identical to the Excel format that Valerie just presented. So you don't have to duplicate efforts. If you input your data on Coral Observer, it goes into the centralized Caribbean spawning database. It goes directly to AGRRA. But it also outputs this CSV or Excel file so that if you're keeping your own records, you can just save that on your computer or copy and paste it into your Excel spreadsheet. And so you can see here, it looks very similar to the one we just saw. And importantly, Coral Observer is free to use. So we're going to take a little look at Coral Observer together. So as I said, you can access it on your internet browser. There's just a plain web page here, just with some links to resources and to the AGRRA website and some information. Once you click on open the app, it's going to take you to app.coralobserver.com and you can log in here. So I'm already registered on here, but on your first occasion, you will have to register. And so, yeah, you can see here it's app.coralobserver.com, but afterwards you can actually download the app onto your device. So if I go to my profile here, you can see these are the fields it's going to ask you on the first time. So it's just your name, your email address. You can tell us what your involvement is. If you would like to tell us a little bit about how you learned about coral spawning, you can do so. It's not obligatory. This box here is to download the app. So I'm going to install it now. And you can see it comes up with a handy icon on your taskbar. And then also an icon on your desktop. You can look at observations or you can add an observation. Today, we're going to add an observation. So again, similar to the Excel spreadsheet, you're just going to input your date and time. You can use the calendar here to select your date, and then you can select the time there as well. We've put in some kind of protections in here to make it as difficult as possible to make errors. We do in situ or ex situ, so you can add in the reef name or the facility name here if you're ex situ. And then if you have your latitude and longitude, you can copy and paste them into these boxes, or you can locate your site using the Google map. So here I'm going to try and navigate to the site where I was collecting data in Acumal, Mexico, when I first started working on this. I discovered through this process that Google Maps doesn't assign a time zone to the sea. So once you've selected your site, you do have to tell it which time zone you're in. And so I'm just zooming in here so I can see the outline of the reef, and then around here is my site. So I'm going to click on there, and then it generates my latitude and longitude, and it asks me for the time zone. If you're in the field and you're doing this on your phone, you can hit get my location, and just like with Google Maps, it will get your location. And then these are all the same fields. So the area that we monitored, the minimum and maximum water depth of your site, and temperatures. We've tried to include like sensible ranges of values here with sensible increments, again, to reduce errors. And then now you can select your species that you are monitoring, the number of colonies. And then if you observe setting, you'll get a little drop down here to input your information about that. So you can select the time. It like defaults to the observation date, so you don't have to put that in every time. And then I'm demonstrating here like the clock and the calendar, but you can also like type in. So I'm typing here into this box if that's easier for you if you're on your desktop. And you can add some notes if you would like to. So again, I'm just selecting the time of spawning here. We also try to put into place some protections so that you can't say that your spawning started before your observation time started, for example. So if you've input an error, you'll get an error message, and then you can like go back. It simply won't let you put in the incorrect information in most occasions. And then you can add some notes on spawning if you would like to. We added this little box here, did you collect gametes, and what you did with it. It's not compulsory. We're just really interested to know who's using the app and what directions it might take in the future to serve the community. Now, if you're lucky enough to have more than one species at your site, then you can select as many species as you like. You can see, just like on the AGRRA site, we have the scientific name, the common name, and then we have the AGRRA code and whether it was male or female. Just going through all the names here, right down at the bottom, we have an unknown species, which hopefully won't be used too often. And then you can continue doing that, or now we're going to go to the next step. So putting in the observer names. So you can put as many names in here as you like. I'm just using some, I'm just inputting for demonstration's sake, but you could put all of your team in there if you like. The same with affiliations and collaborators. So perhaps you have like a home institution. And then, so I'm NSU, but then I'm also, a founder of CORALIUM Observer, and then perhaps I might mention like the dive center I was working with, other collaborators, whatever you like. And again, you can put more notes in there. Submit your observation, and then you can download your file. You can also add a new observation, but now I'm going to just, for the sake of demonstration, show you the next step. So under the observations tab, you can see here, I've just been inputting some data. Some of it is dummy data, some of it is real. Just inputting it to check that it's all working. And on here, you should only be able to see your own data. I'm an administrator, so I can see all of the data that's been input. There's also these yellow like pencil buttons down the side. If you submit your data and then immediately realize you made a mistake, you can click on one of these and it allows you to edit the input. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So once you've downloaded your CSV file, this probably looks quite familiar by now. It's not as pretty as the AGRRA one, but it's the same kind of format. It spits your data out in a format that's very easy to transfer into your home data set. So you can just download this. Coral Observer stores your data. So if you're using it for months and months or over years, then you'll be able to build your own kind of database within there. And you'll also see there's on here, it says one of the columns to put in like photos and videos. That's something we're hoping like in future versions, working with the CCSD team, as they mentioned, that's going to be really useful data as well. So hopefully that's something we can add. Another benefit of using this system is that it will automatically calculate your nights after full moon. So based on the lat long coordinates you give it, it will locate you, and then it will tell you like when sunrise was, when moonrise was, and it can calculate all of that for you. So Coral Observer is up, it's online. We need people to test it out. Apps are always subject to bugs and improvements and new versions. So I would be very happy if you feel like it would help what you're working on to input your data via Coral Observer. So remember, you can access it on the website. There's the QR code again if you would like to scan that. And then I'm just including my details here. You can reach out to any of us and they can, always direct any sort of tech questions towards me. I will probably then direct them towards my web developer friend, Rusty. But please do reach out if you encounter anything when you're inputting your data, or if you have any feedback or suggestions, please do reach out. I love talking about coral spawning. And so I would be very happy to hear from you. And additionally, I think I saw a question about like the ex situ spawning. That's something, it's on there at the moment. So if you want to like try it out, please go for it. But that's something that over the next couple of years, as part of my project that I'm working on, I'm really interested in building out, and I would love to have a conversation with you about that. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jenny. Exciting to see the new app and ready to dive into that. Valerie, we'll switch over to you.
Yes, thanks, Jenny, for this wonderful tour of the Coral Observer. Before we give you the floor for all of your questions and discussions, I want to present the last slide to talk about our future goals and some sort of deadlines that we want to, give ourselves. And So the future steps are to continue developing CoreObserver and the corresponding database to make sure that it suits everyone's needs for smoother data entry, continuing developing the dashboards that Lynette has presented. We also really hope to incorporate all of the historical data by the end of November 2025. But as mentioned earlier, we will need your help with that so that we can translate your old data set or previous data sets into the Excel template so that it's compatible with the spawning database. Again, please reach out to us, and we also will reach out to those of you who have already provided your templates, your spawning data in the past, so that we can start working with you to incorporate all of that past data while you are also making all of these new observations. We plan to host another webinar in early 2026, where you will be able to provide your feedback on the spawning database, on the data input, whether through Excel or to CoreObserver, provide your feedback about the dashboards, what would you like to have access to, what kind of graphs and dashboards would be useful for you and your team. We will also be presenting an overview of the data that was collected to date. So, where did we collect data? Who was sharing their data? Which species were we looking at? And then hopefully also get a bit of an overview of some of the Caribbean-wide spawning patterns for different species. And then we also have the goal of publishing a scientific article that will be introducing the corresponding database, but only once it's populated with observations from around the Caribbean. So these are our next steps, next goals, and we hope you can help us and contribute attaining these goals in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Before we move into the question time, because we're seeing some really great questions, I'd welcome everybody to turn their cameras on so we can see everyone's smiling faces, bring us all together. And we're going to go through and open up questions. If you have a question, you can write it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and you can ask your question directly. But while you're thinking about your questions, we're going to go ahead and do 2 more polls here, just real quickly. And the 2 polls are you interested in sharing past or future coral spawning observations with the CCSD? And then, what coral spawning topics are you interested in learning more about? We have a wealth of experts here online with us, and we're looking forward to being able to share this information over time. So just take a quick moment to either write your question in the chat or raise your hand, and then also answer the 2 questions. We'll give it just another quick minute for people to answer the questions. Again, are you interested in sharing past or future spawning observations? And what coral spawning topics are you interested in learning more about? Just another minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the poll, and we'll share the results. So for the first question, are you interested in sharing past or future coral spawning observations? Love that nobody said no, and 85% said yes. And for the 15% who said maybe, we look forward to working with you and answering some questions you may have, or helping you to get to the yes side. So I'm really excited to see how many people are interested in sharing data and filling the database and the maps up in the dashboards. Now, the second question we had was, what coral spawning topics are you interested in learning more about? So we have a wide variety of answers here. Probably the most one was larval propagation, which I'm really excited to see, because I personally think that larval propagation is going to be one of our key tools to helping to rescue and restore some of our corals populations in the Caribbean, especially for some of those corals that we may not know as much about. So looking forward to getting more information about larval propagation, and also about just coral reproduction and coral spawning in general. For coral spawning calendars, that's a really great question. We had a workshop last June where we brought managers from the Caribbean around to talk about how do you actually make a spawning calendar. And so we're looking forward to providing some more information with this group on that. If you have some ideas for future webinars, please write them in the chat now, and we will be following up with everybody on how to share information. So I'm going to stop sharing that now, and we'll start going through some of the questions. We'll start first, we'll go back to a few of the questions that were in the chat because everyone might not have seen those. So we had Raquel ask about if you could please explain what the definition of a dribble is when you're talking about spawning, because you can have spawning and no spawning. And Anya or Val, do you want to explain to the group how the definition of dribble is?
Sure, I can go ahead. We call dribbles when you see some egg sperm bundles that are being released, or a tiny bit of eggs or sperm that are being released by a colony, but it's kind of obvious that it's not fully spawning. And that would normally happen, that happens like sometimes a day or two before the bigger event. And so we cannot really classify it as like a full spawning, real spawning event, but it definitely is an indication that some spawning is about to happen or has, only a little bit has happened. And so we like to have that category because dribbles would be a really good indication already for your kind of time window. You are definitely looking at the right time, and like time in the month or time in the evening for spawning. And so it is a useful observation, but we don't categorize it as a fully yes, there was spawning.
Okay, great. Thank you, Val.
Yeah, just to add to that, sorry, Patricia, just to add to that, we usually classify it as less than a milliliter if you're using the centrifuge tubes for collecting spawn, but anywhere from a few packets to less than a milliliter is really what we would call dribble in our lab.
We might want to think about getting some videos and having those on the website so we can show an example of what a dribble is versus what a spawning is. Okay, great. We had another question about from Valeria, and also Ilsa asked a similar question. Can you include past data from any year? And I'm really excited about this question, especially from these two, because they've spent a lot of time underwater. So the short answer is yes. And Valerie, do you want to bring up that point again that you said about how the next step is? If you have historic data, which I know Valeria and Ilsa and many of you do have just years of data. I think back about me going back to the 90s and doing spawning observations with Alina Schmont. But yeah, dig back into all that data that you have. So Valerie, do you want to just, or Valerie, do you want to add how that process will be again, so everybody knows?
Yes, and Anya and others, please, add if I'm forgetting something. But for those of you who have these like really large amount of data or data sets from the past, it would be pretty cumbersome to start entering them one by one in the new template or through the app, because all those observations are individual entries. And so the way we're going to be doing this is that we will help you convert your old data, your past data, in whatever format it currently is, into the format required for the new Excel template, which is then compatible with the corresponding database. And so a lot of you have already shared these data sets with Anya and I in the past. I have some from a lot of your different organizations. And so we will be reaching out to you, but you can also reach out to us so that we know, you're interested in sharing this historical data, and we will be working together with you to make sure we troubleshoot any errors that are occurring when you are translating, like converting your new data or your past data into the new template. And again, that sounds like a lot of work, but Anya's team has done it, and it's very feasible, and you get better at it when you do it a lot. And we will have two Vanessa, so Vanessa Francisco from Anya's lab and Vanessa Hartman from my lab, who will be helping you doing that transition and helping you, with the back and forth if you potentially run into some errors with your older data sets.
Yeah, and also to add to that, we will not add any data to the database unless we specifically have an agreement from you. So even if you have sent us data previously, which many of you have, we will be reaching out to you individually, to your organization or to you, to make sure that we have your okay.
Yes.
And as Val said, it really it goes pretty quickly, not quickly, but it's easy. They've worked out a lot of the issues before. So, and the importance is to make sure all the data that's coming in is consistent, you know, among the different data sets, because we all enter and data. I know, like even me just writing a data code like DLab, I sometimes do it mixed up and do like DBLA, you know, just because of writing quickly underwater. So all of these quality control checks that Lynette has built into the Excel spreadsheet really helps to improve that accuracy and consistency. And I personally am really excited to see these historic data sets and just learn from them, especially for species that we don't normally, you know a lot about, like or species that might be really affected by SCTLD, like the Dendrogyra, or, you know, looking at some of the mycetophilias and other species that we may not have as much information. So that's going to be really exciting to see that. Okay, we're going to switch over and we're going to come back to some of the questions in the chat, but I know Nikki has had her hand up. So Nikki, I welcome you to open your mic and join. And Nikki, I just want to say your Facebook page is amazing, and it's so much fun and exciting to just kind of start to see people say, hey, I saw spawning, and see the pictures, because that is inspiring, you know, to see, you know, that the corals are still out there and they're still spawning, and it gives us hope. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Patricia.
Facebook page.
It is a comment. Just congratulations, Valerie and Anya. I know this has been a labor of love. It's been a long time coming. You guys have just poured your heart and souls in this, and I just want to congratulate you and say how fantastic this is. It's so nice to see it all come together. For those of us that might have other folks' data, so for instance, we inherited a bunch of John Levitan's data, and then of course through like Anna Jordan's thesis and so forth, we have other folks. How do you want to deal with that? And this might be a question for you all offline. We can chat about it. But if people have passed on data to others, how do we want to do that, especially when we have been the one that's done the quality control? I wouldn't want to go back. So I don't know if there's other people like us out there, but could you address that?
Well, I think for my part, and I also encourage Valerie to answer, but for my part, if it's gone through your quality control, then I think it's very, very trustworthy. So, but I think it's something that we can talk about on a more individual basis and work out. But I mean, to have more and more data would just be absolutely thrilling to have in the database. So, and I mean, yeah, I guess we need to maybe check with Dan to see if he's okay with it being included in the database, even though he sort of gave it to you, but just because it would be a different use. I mean, I guess a complement to what.
Yeah, so that's what I thought about, maybe also just copying the individual who submitted it originally.
Yes, definitely. So I mean, that's what we're sort of calling the data contributor. So to us, he would be the data contributor, but it would be through you. But not the original data set necessarily, seeing it has gone through quality control. But I'm sure we can deal with these on an individual basis. We'll definitely be getting in touch with you about this.
Yeah, of course. And again, congratulations, ladies. It's
thank
amazing.
You so much.
And then also Jenny too, the app is fantastic. And Patricia, thank you for facilitating this, and the rest of AGRRA folks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm excited to see the past data. Margaret, you had your hand up. We'll go ahead and.
I guess I just was going to follow up with what Nikki was asking. So from my perspective, I would love for there just be one process, like as Nikki was saying, like from Anna Jordan's thesis, because a lot of my really ancient observations are already there, and I would much rather it go in one piece than having to dig through this again. So I'm just going to advocate and say, yeah, if we can like start with the data from Anna Jordan's thesis, if you have to do a check with everybody, but that would be fabulous to take that as sort of one process. That would be fabulous, because that saves a lot of excavating back to the very, very old notebooks.
Oh, that would be really, really awesome. And again, because it's gone through the Fogarty quality control, I think, you know, this is going to be a really huge step for us if we can count on those data.
Yeah, maybe one additional small note here is that I think a lot of us have data from others that are, we're kind of the manager of like our own sort of data set. And I feel like it would be our own responsibility to check with the team of, diverse people that have been contributing data within our own data sets to make sure we have their okay before we sign the data sharing agreement and we send it over to the corresponding database. So basically, if, for example, Margaret would be sharing a lot of data that includes observations from a lot of different collaborators, then she would need to get their okay before she sends it to us, right? Like, I think everybody knows their team and should be asking those permissions before agreeing on behalf of everyone who's generated the data.
Just like in a publication, right? When you send a manuscript, I think it's a similar situation. You want to make sure that everybody is in agreement. And I think that, yes, I agree with Val, that responsibility would be for the data contributor to then have those permissions.
Great. So we're looking forward to lots of follow-up conversations, which will be good. Going back to some questions in the chat, we had a question about will the databases be able to handle land-based observations? We know that there's a lot of amazing work that's going on with land-based rescue and reproduction. And so the question was, is there the opportunity to incorporate this data as well? Anya, do you want to take that one?
There will be. And it is something that we have spoken to the land-based spawning group about. But again, because it is more complex, because you have them in a different setting to the natural setting. So all of those data need to be included because different people will have different times of full moon or different exposures, etc. So we need to work out what is the best kind of template to have all of that information included. And so it is something we will work on. We wanted to get this one out first, and then we will work on the more complicated land-based, but we're definitely interested in getting data because there are more and more groups working on this. And there's also a fair bit of data already that has been gathered. So it would be wonderful to have this. And then Jenny may want to also pitch in here. She is also collecting data through the Coral Observer to have land-based observations.
Yes, thank you, Anya. Right now it's a tab on the Coral Observer. But other than that, the fields are just the same as the field observations. And so obviously that would need to be changed for the particular needs of the ex situ data collection. But I'd be really happy to discuss that, as Anya said, like on a more sort of personal, if we get together the ex situ people and hear a little bit about what would be useful for that data collection. But yeah, Coral Observer is definitely able and interested in helping to collect that data also.
And I'll just interject here. So the land-based assisted sexual reproduction group that I run, the laser group, we are keen to facilitate this. And so we will have some different needs, Jenny. And so I think we're gonna try to put that on our list of future meetings. And we'd love for you and Valerie and Anya to go ahead and visit. We've been trying to deal with some other things, so we'll with lights and so forth. But let's go ahead and make that happen, and we'll invite you all to have a very directed and specific conversation about that. And for those of you too let me do a quick plug on May 1st, the laser group. Again, anyone who is interested in ex situ spawning, please reach out to me, Fogarty, FOGARTYN at UNCW. I will put it in the chat. And the land-based ex situ folks were having a workshop, a Q&A workshop. So, and that is coming up on, I don't want to give the wrong, anyone on my team know the exact date? I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, and also add your email into the chat, because I think you ended at UNCW, but it's uncw.edu, I think.
Yeah, I'm
right?
putting
Just
that in
to-
the chat right
yeah,
now, and
yeah,
I'll put
definitely.
that
Thanks.
workshop, and whoever is interested in any type of land-based ex situ spawning, please join us for that Q&A. We will expect you guys have a little bit of background. We are not doing a presentation or anything like this. This is more come to us with your questions. And so Joanna Figueredo, Carrie O'Neill, and there's a bunch of us that are going to be there. Hopefully Jamie Craigs and Justin at SeaWorld as well. So please join us, and I'll put that information in the chat.
Thank you, Nikki. That will be great. Looking forward to that. And going back to the question of being able to share the data, one of the nice things with the tracking maps and the dashboards is that even if they're not in the same database, you can add layers. And so even if it's a separate layer for land-based, it could be put into a tracking map very easily or into a dashboard, just showing that there's different data sources. But it's a great way to kind of combine data that may be different or collected in different ways. Okay, going back to the chat, there was a question about, will this data be available if you put it in the app and the AGRRA dashboard link? If I was to submit data on the app, could I download that data later through AGRRA? Lynette, do you want to answer that? And Jenny, then you can add anything to that.
Yes, absolutely. So right now, the app does currently talk with the CCSD. The two are linked. We are still in the debugging process to make sure everything's working correctly. So we are looking for any beta testers that want to go ahead and go on the app and start getting some data in there so we can make sure that it's coming over to the CCSD correctly without any issues. Currently, both the map and the dashboard are being updated manually. They're not being fed directly by either the app or the CCSD. That is something that we're hoping to fix in the future. So we like I said earlier, that we will be making sure that both the app and the dashboard have the latest data both before and after spawning seasons, and we'll be making sure that we update them regularly, especially as we have new historic data that's coming in. But we do hope one day to have both the map and the dashboard being fed directly, either through the CCSD directly, where all the app data would be going in as well. So all the app data would be, being filtered through that way, or through a direct link from the app itself. So we're still kind of figuring out exactly how that will work in the future.
Great, thanks, Lynette. Jenny, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just to add that if anybody does want to practice inputting data in the app, that would be very useful. And you can download your CSV file. So you input your data, download your CSV, and you have a record of it. And all of the data from the app is currently being sent to AGRRA. And as Lynette mentioned, we're just working out the details of that going onto the AGRRA map. But in the meantime, your data is stored on Coral Observer, which is also a remote server. It's an extra backup for all of this data as well. So just to mention that if you input your data, it's safe. And then you can also download your CSV file as an extra hard copy backup, should you choose to do so. And please don't be shy. I've already had a couple of people send me messages about stuff on the app, and that's super useful. So thank you. Please continue doing that.
Thanks, Jenny. Jumping back to the questions in the chat, Roddy asked a really great question. Is there a consolidated table or list detailing the type of spawning that is employed by different coral species? And Lynette, I'm going to let you answer that one, and then Anya and Val, if you want to add something else. But as part of the standardization QA/QC process, they did work. Go ahead, Lynette, I'll let you finish.
Well, honestly, I'll probably just hand it over directly to Anya or Val. I do know that the three of us worked really hard as I was putting together that list to have for the Excel template. There was a lot of back and forth to figure out exactly which ones, were more brooders versus, the separate releasing and things like that. So I know they went deep into the history and all the archives of all the different publications to try to figure out which species were doing what. So I don't know, Anya or Val, if anything was done with that other than the list that we have currently in the Excel template.
You want to answer that, Val, or do you want me to? Okay, I'll go.
Go for it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand the question correctly, whether you're asking about sort of in published papers or in our database.
In the database, what we basically did was go through and try to find the most recent information for every species that we know that's in the Caribbean. For a number of them, we don't know. So this is one of the wonderful things about having more and more people out in the water and possibly be interested in species that are not as well documented as others, that we would love to get spawning information on those. And because I'd say there are about 15 or so species that we have no spawning information. We don't know if they're brooders or if they're spawners. But so in the database, the information is as updated as possible. And if you want general information on this from, I think Alina Schmant's paper from 1985 has a fair bit of information. And then there's quite a bit of information from Mark Vermey, from Ernesto Whale, also in our publication from 2023 on applying coral breeding, we have some information there. So if you need any more information on anything specific, just let Val or myself know.
And maybe that's something we can post on the website, is just that little table that we have of the information, and just say it's a work in progress. But it's a quick reference sheet for people who just want to say, you know, when might I see this, or how might the species reproduce? And then we have the list of publications that they can look into more. That's a great question, Roddy. Another question.
Wanted to add, sorry, I just wanted to add that most of that information is, you know, like you already mentioned, a bit scattered in literature, and we did put together like quite a lengthy list of suggested references that include some of the reproductive biology of a lot of different Caribbean species on the AGRRA website. It's probably not complete. It's a work in progress. So for example, if you see that there are potentially missing references for some of the species that you know, please let us know. But also if you're interested in, again, specific information about a species, you can always reach out and we can help you find the information if it does exist.
Great, thank you. We have a little bit of a different question here that I think is very interesting and also important. Someone had asked, are coral spawning monitoring also including checking for invasive corals and their presence around? While the coral spawning map, tracking map does not track invasive corals, we do have, we've been tracking that and working with colleagues and experts throughout the Caribbean on tracking invasive coral species. And we have on our website, if you go under reef monitoring, you can go down to the page of invasive soft coral exchanges. And we have information as much as we know now. We also have a tracking map there. So if you are out there doing coral monitoring, either coral monitoring or spawning monitoring, and you do see one of this invasive soft corals, you can enter that information in here. Right now, we just have 3 locations where it has been confirmed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. So you can find out more information there.
Yeah, and I think for the moment, our spawning database is focused pretty much entirely on sclerotinia coral spawning, yeah. But we're definitely interested in other observations, and perhaps in a future version of this, an updated version of the database, we'll be able to include more species.
Also, there was a question for joining the larva propagation working group. What shall they do? So I think if you can put the information in there for the CRC, and I know Nikki did put in the information about land base, so there's 2 good resources there. And let's see if there's some other questions. Someone did say to clarify for historic data, how to enter the data, and we would suggest using the Excel templates and reaching out to Valerie and Anya if you have historic data. For future data, like if you're going out this summer, to go ahead and try the app and use that and start entering new data into the app. Are there any other questions? Did I miss anybody? I've been trying to go through and make sure I tried to get everybody.
Hi there, this is Renata from Barbados. Hello, everybody.
Renata,
apologies for coming in late. I was out snorkeling with my nephew's niece, baby. One was my nephew's little girl, so came in a little late. But do we have any idea? I know for us, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge to know when the spawning is going on in the different islands? Or will you be sending out a list of potential spawning days or evenings for the different areas or islands?
So that's a great question. On the website right now, we have, if you go to the website, I'll just jump back on there real quickly. We do have the coral spawning calendars that are available now. If you give me just a quick minute, I'll go there. So you can go to the AGRRA website, to the coral spawning database. And as you scroll down, you'll see a collection of them. These are also available on the CRC website. Here we did the spawning prediction calendar, so you can look for one that's close to where you are. So for example, Anya just updated hers for 2025 for the Caribbean Mexico area. The Dominican Republic produces one for their area every year. The Southern Caribbean VOW, I know, is updating theirs right now. In the Bahamas, they also have one in the Bahamas. So there are some available for different regions. And if you're interested in learning how to get more information and make your own coral spawning observations and calendar, please reach out, because I know Anya and Val would be happy to talk with you about that. And Anya and Val, do you want to add anything to that?
No, but if anyone's interested in developing their own prediction calendars, we can get in touch. I think we did a webinar on that, and of course we can help anyone who's interested.
Yes, and maybe one of the goals of having this coral spawning database together with the dashboards is that eventually, you will be able to click, once we have a lot of data in, you'll be able to click, let's say I'm interested in Acropora palmata, I'm located in Barbados, and then, like you can click on your map and see what's been observed around. And so that will be hopefully a really useful tool for you guys to be able to predict in areas that maybe haven't been monitored previously.
Yeah, what would be really cool if you could just click another button and it would make your own coral prediction calendar for your latitude and longitude and the species you're interested in. But that's in the future. There was a question from Maria Villalpando asking about the output from the platform and the app. Will they both be the same or similar to the input template? So I'll let Lynette and perhaps Jenny talk about that, because they're similar, but a little bit different.
Yes, so I think they would be very similar. There may be a few extra questions on the app that you may get some information back. I will say though, when you input through the Excel template, and then we get it into, we do the error checking, we get it put into the CCSD, we will be exporting the data back out, and there will be some calculations that are done. The nights after full moon, minutes after sunset, all the times gets converted into minutes after sunset and those sorts of things. So so once we get it in there, we do provide the data back to you with those calculations done for you. So you'll have a copy of the data that you submitted to us, as well as those few extra calculated columns. And I believe Jenny's app is very similar. I think there's, like I said, a few extra columns, few extra things of data that she asked for. That I don't think they send all of that data over to us. We only require for the CCSD the columns that are in the Excel template. So that would be pretty much the only difference. Otherwise, they're very similar. Jenny, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I think they're the same. I've not actually got one of the AGRRA files downloaded and compared it next to the Coral Observer download, but I believe they'll be identical. They also calculate like your days after full moon and sunset and everything. And I think the only extra field, which we might remove for the moment anyway, is if you submitted any photos, because we don't yet have that capability. So I think they're very similar, if not the same.
All right, so very similar inputs, but similar inputs with some different columns from the app, from the Observer app, right? Because
No,
there are
but
some questions you asked that are different to ours.
Are we talking about the output file?
No, the input.
Oh, I misunderstood. Yeah, so for the input, there might be some extra when you sign up, for example. But very similar.
The input is almost
The idea is the
different, but the output is like exactly the same. It's the same
Yes,
column, because then the two outputs are compatible with the database.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I've compared them, they are the same.
Yeah, the output is the same. The inputs are slightly different.
Yeah.
What I said at the beginning. So the idea, the whole idea, Maria, is that it will help you in making predictions, because the nights after full moon and the minutes after sunset and the dates and the months will be in the output file.
Amazing. Thank you all and congratulations.
Thank you. Within the data to be shared, do you contemplate adding the colony conditions? We don't have that information in the coral spawning database, because that kind of information is usually gathered through AGRRA, and so we didn't want to be overlapping there, but it's certainly something that you can maintain a record of in your database. I think, Jenny, maybe you do have, those are some questions that are in the app.
What questions were they, sorry?
About coral health, like whether it suffered bleaching or no. Okay.
No, we really don't have any extra questions. I was just trying to think when you asked me there. We give you the opportunity if you'd like to tell us if you collected gametes and what you did with them, but it's not an obligatory field at all. But other than that, there's really no extra, there's nothing like coral condition or anything like that.
Irene, I think that's a really great question and something to think about for the future. We do look at coral condition like size, look at the size of it, and then the percent mortality, new mortality, old mortality, if it's bleach, disease, other types of sources of mortality in the AGRRA, methods that we use. And we've talked to Anya in the past, maybe it's something we can work towards. But to me, that's one of my biggest questions, especially after the disease outbreak of the last few years, is of those colonies, many have been afflicted and they're not full 100% tissue anymore. They're little isolates, like a little pocket here, pocket there. And, just the question of, are those colonies able to reproduce with so much tissue loss? And if so, just getting some of that information. So definitely something we can, follow up on, but great point, and something to be looking out for, that when you're doing your observations, to look at just the condition of the corals too.
As maybe a small addition here is that the corresponding database is not made in a way where you are doing single observations per individual colony, which would be a total different way of entering your data. Each row would be a single colony. And this is something that if you want to, you can do with your own data set. However, if you do want to integrate some of these remarks, like you can actually add it in the additional notes. You can add, like 3 of these colonies that spawned today were half diseased, or these notes will be stored together with the database and can always be referred back later. But if you definitely are interested in just individual colony status, health, size, genotype, whatever they are, that is definitely not the same format that we are entering the data in the database. Because we're looking more at the population level than individual colonies.
And Nikki, I don't know if you have a chance, if you could write in the chat box the web link of the Facebook page that you have, because I'm not sure if everybody has that. But I saw you wrote your other information, but if you can write the Facebook page, that would be great.
And also just a note on that, Nikki, we've gone through the Facebook page and downloaded a lot of the data from there into an Excel sheet. Not all of the data are incomplete, but we've loaded in what we can, and so eventually that will go also, all of the data collected there since I think 2017 will also go into the database once we've validated it.
Okay, yeah, I think I started that. Yeah, I think that was much longer. Yeah, it might go back to 2012 or so, 2013.
Wow, okay.
So,
all right.
But we'll see if we can dig up we have the rest of it too. So.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll get with you.
Okay, wonderful.
And also, if you have suggestions or comments when you get to exploring the tracking map and you start to use it, if you have suggestions on things on how to use it, or want to know more information, please reach out to Lynette for that, and also for the dashboards. As Lynette mentioned, we're developing these dashboards, and we really want to hear from you what is going to be the most useful information, because that's the whole idea of making these visualizations, is making it useful, maybe by species or, particular information. But give us feedback on that as well, because we are in the development phase of that, and we're excited to move forward on that. So welcome your feedback on those data visualizations.
Love feedback.
Before, are there any other questions? I know we're coming up to the 3 o'clock hour. My goodness, these 2 hours have flown by, and just wonderful just to see all of this interest in coral spawning. Anya and Valerie, do you have any other comments you'd like to share with everybody before we leave? I will turn the floor over to you two.
Well, first, I just want to thank this amazing group of women who have pulled together and made this possible. I think it's something we started out quite a number of years ago, and just to actually see it coming together and to have so much interest in what we're doing and in the future of coral spawning. It's just very exciting, and I really appreciate all of your dedication and all the time you spend in the water, and just give us your observations if you're willing, and we'd be very happy to include them in the database and make it as strong as possible for the whole Caribbean.
Thanks, Anya. I think I would like to add as a few last words before we all head out, is that obviously the coral spawning database is a work in progress, and we didn't want to, hold off much longer until we somehow would make it perfect before we launched it, because we want you to use it, and we want to hear back from you. What are the issues you might be encountering? What could, would there be other ways of doing it? Or are there fields that you would want to add? All the questions that you've been asking today are super useful also for further improvements of the database. But after you'll be using it for a whole spawning season, trying the app, trying the Excel sheets, then we will hear from you again early next year, and we'll be working towards these improvements together with you. So yeah, we're excited to present the database today, even though we know it's not, 100% perfect. We thought, let's just do it and see what everybody, can contribute to improving it together.
And I should also include Jacob and Rusty too, as helping so much, volunteering their time. Neither of them have been paid for what they do, and they've made a huge difference in what we can do here. So thanks to you guys as well.
So the 2 men that did all the coding behind the scenes.
Well, thank you, everybody, and we look forward to hearing how you what you find this summer when you're out there observing. And please share photos, especially on the Facebook page, because I think the photos really tell a lot. And jump into the data base, either historic data or the new data, the Coral Observer app. And we look forward to hearing from everybody. And if you do have any suggestions for future webinars or sharing information, please write it in the chat, because we would love to stay in touch throughout the summer. So happy diving, everybody, and look forward to seeing more coral spawn.
Safe diving.
Yeah, thank you.